So Nick, there's a whole host of applications now available within the Power Platform. But what exactly is Dynamics, Dataverse, Power Apps? What are they?
So Power Platform, as you say, is an all-encompassing kind of term for lots and lots of different aspects, ranging from anything from the Dataverse, as you say, through to Power BI, Copilot. They all kind of come into the fringes of that big kind of all-encompassing term. Dataverse really is the kind of most obvious one to treat. That's at the center. It really is just the engine that powers everything else. It's the database. Along with the database comes all of the abilities for security and indexing and searching and all of that kind of stuff that you don't really want to get your hands dirty. So if you were building an application with a back-end database, you would have to take into consideration all of those things. What the Dataverse gives you is that out of the box, ready to go, and you can just run with your data modeling and things like that. So it really accelerates you through. So that's the Dataverse, kind of the engine behind things. Dynamics 365, Power Apps, they are the user layer, the user interface layer, if you like. So they're providing you your window into that database. Dynamics 365 is just a term for first-party provided apps. So they're applications that are pre-built by Microsoft. Lots of R&D goes into them, lots of research. So the sales app is the obvious one. Service, they're kind of the two OGs of the Dynamics suite. Then you've got field service, you've got project, and then there's also other members of the family which kind of sit on the edge, things like Business Central and Finance and Operations. You then have Power Apps, which are two different flavors, or three these days actually. So you've got Canvas apps, you've got model-driven apps, and you've got coded apps, which is the new kid on the block, if you like. So model-driven app is probably the oldest of the flavors. Model-driven app means it's driven by the data model. So in effect, you don't have so much say over the user interface. It's kind of a bit like Lego. It's, here's my table. This is what a view looks like. This is what a form looks like. It's your typical back office application. Very familiar. Canvas apps go one step into the kind of custom realm and starts allowing you to put things anywhere on a form. They're really good for small, specific user applications. So think things like submitting expenses, or when you're out on the road as a salesperson, you get in your car, you just quickly update your opportunity. You wouldn't want to work entirely in a Canvas app. And then the new one on the block is code apps, which kind of just really nod to the fact that the Dataverse is a database and an engine, and just allows you to create React applications, use that database as the backend in the same way as you would have used a PostgreSQL or SQL server in the olden days. So they're kind of what people think of when they think of the Power Platform. But then, as I say, you've got other things coming in now, and it's just growing and growing and growing, because technically SharePoint can come into it, because SharePoint can make use of Canvas apps, but also can make use of Power Automate, and Power Automate is in there as well, which is the automation engine that allows asynchronous processing of moving data around or moving it between systems. And as soon as you've got that and the thousands of connectors that Microsoft provide, it means that cloud of apps really grows and grows and grows. So it is kind of confusing, the terms, and if you talk to someone who's been working with Dynamics for a long time, you'll find them using Dynamics, Dataverse, and Power Platform interchangeably. But really, that's kind of what the definitions are. The platform is just kind of a term for everything. Dataverse is a term for the database and the engine that sits behind it. And then when you say Dynamics, really, you're kind of talking about those applications that you're using to access it.
Yeah. And with all of those changes that are coming to the Power Platform, generally speaking, in the market, it's getting a lot of hype, it's getting a lot of attention. Is it worth it? and what should people be looking for with those changes that are coming?
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth the hype, for sure. Microsoft are doing a lot of really good work, embracing the kind of the new AI culture that's coming in. So things like the MCPs that you can now have pointing to your data really means that those LLMs can churn through a whole lot of information, give you really good insights. Things like using Copilot and agents to automate certain aspects, provide insights, and sit alongside applications. And just that ability to have a data hub that is tried and tested and has been around for a really, really long time, which comes with it out of the box, full server side or server layer security. It comes with backups. It comes with being able to put in an ALM, so an application lifecycle management, straight out of the box. You can have pipelines deploying through and have some governance. It really, really does get you started without having to worry about kind of not. You still have to worry about pen testing and things like that and planning your security, but there's a whole level that you don't need to worry about because it's already there.
Yeah. And obviously with these changes that are coming and everything that you've just described, is there now a question of the purpose of Dynamics, or what does Dynamics bring to the table now, given all of the changes that you've just mentioned with the Power Platform?
Yeah, so as I say, Dynamics itself is a term for these first-party apps. So your sales app, your service app, your field service, your project, that kind of thing. And certainly we're seeing the need for those first-party apps dropping off. It's all on a case-by-case basis because sometimes they come back in when you talk about marketing. So Customer Insights Journeys, for example, is a first-party app, sits on top of the Dataverse, complements the sales apps. And so it's really hard to say what it brings to the table because it brings different things to different people. Some people will implement the Sales Hub and only use a very, very tiny bit of it. They may just use opportunities. We see plenty of customers, they just want to track opportunities. They don't really mind about raising quotes, revising quotes, converting to orders, converting to invoices, passing over to Business Central, because that's a very traditional kind of sales processes. And yes, it's brilliant when you can do that, but not all industries work in that way. Not all industries have a product list that they sell formally. So really what Dynamics brings is the ability to have very specific kind of use cases, again, same as Dataverse, that have been tried and tested. So Microsoft have put a lot of R&D. As I said, the sales and the customer service are the oldest parts of what was Microsoft CRM back in the 1.2 era. That was what Microsoft shipped. That was the whole CRM system. Kind of the likes of marketing and field service and that kind of thing came along later. And when Microsoft introduced those first-party apps, they put a lot of work into it. There's a lot of R&D, a lot of fancy stuff goes in, and that's what you're really paying for. When you pay your additional license fee, because that's what you've got to remember, these first-party apps all come with their own license fee. So just because you buy a sales app, sales enterprise license, doesn't give you the right to use field service. So again, as partners, we are responsible for making sure we're getting the most out of our customers' money. We're making sure that it goes as far as it can. So when we're evaluating, a customer wants to use opportunities, we may, in the olden days when licensing wasn't done like that, we may have just gone, oh, okay, cool, we'll use the sales app. Now it's, okay, well, what parts of the sales app are you going to use? And is that really worth the spend? Or do we look at creating something equivalent to, but not a copy of, opportunities? Because ultimately all you're wanting to do is have a record which gives you stages that you're going to progress through and record some information whilst you can track activity against it. Probably wouldn't need a sales enterprise license. So they can bring stuff to the table. They can sometimes be completely overkill. They can be a bit of a sledgehammer to crack a walnut. And that's a really important thing for our technical architects and our functional consultants to really ascertain and work with customers on.
So given what we've just discussed, would it be fair to say that we're moving back to a model of this idea of hub and spoke, where you have a centralized, traditional, in the most common sense, a traditional CRM system at the hub with these microservices and applications that help service some of those more unique processes that an organization may have internally, which the traditional model would be very much trying to rebuild that in a platform like Dynamics?
Yeah, so again, kind of really architecting a system like that or an environment like that is really important. It's working out what's the best fit for the job. So whilst the Dataverse is fantastic, it's not a data warehouse. So it works very well at providing data for applications needs. It's a very expensive way to hoard data. So you may not want to run off into it's the central place for absolutely everything to go, but is actually one of the spokes for that central place. And your central place may be something like Fabric. So really architecting and thinking seriously about what fits the bill is a really important thing. The other thing is to really ensure that the identity of the Dataverse, and I use the word Dataverse rather than CRM, is very important, because a CRM system is supposed to be a customer relationship management system. So if you kind of move that phrase to one side and you just talk about a relational database, then yes, you start getting kind of spokes coming off of it. So it may well be that you have, as you say, a hub and spoke kind of design, but the hub isn't necessarily the Dataverse, but the Dataverse is a mini hub, if you like, for kind of other processes to come in, and then that to feed off and move its data into something that's a bit more long term, rather than paying month on month the fees that go with the Dataverse.